Welcome to the latest episode of the Blazing Musket Podcast. We are here for what has turned into our September-October roundtable as fall is in full swing and the playoffs are on the horizon for nearly every professional team in the New England area. There's also a new development in the USL. Apparently, they're going to be welcoming a private equity investment. A little bit of a racism controversy down in Hartford to talk about. And we also kind of delve a little bit into discussing coaches and how long they should or should not get to turn things around and be successful. We've obviously seen Caleb Porter get the axe, which many people were very excited about. But there are some questions about maybe Connell Smith down in Rhode Island, and also maybe some questions about whether Brendan Burke should be maybe the man to come into Foxborough and fix everything there. Anyway, we will get to all of those interesting topics with our great guests this month, who join us from a variety of podcasts and obviously contributions to the Blazing Musket as a whole. So they're going to go around and all returners this month. So if you've enjoyed them before, you get to enjoy them again. And they're going to go around quickly, let you know who they are, where they're from, and what it is they do in the world of soccer. Starting with Matt from the Raising Anchor.
Yep, so my name is Matt Entrick, and I'm one of the hosts of Raising Anchor that covers Rhode Island FC. And we do our shows, used to just be once a week on Thursdays, but now branching into twice a week. I actually have a double header tonight, so right after this show, recording our own show, so that's exciting. And it's been a tough space to be a Rhode Island FC fan right now. Not quite sure if we're going to actually finish above that playoff line, as the team is showing that it's ready to get off of life support, but then just doesn't seem to be able to get across the finish line in other ways. So been an ups and down kind of season so far, and these last 4 weeks are going to be kind of make or break, do or die for Rhode Island and the Amber and Blue.
All right. Let's go up to Vermont. Mike, is really not too much going on up there, but how have you been?
There's a bunch of stuff going on up here.
Oh, sorry.
No, yeah, season tickets just went on sale for previous season ticket holders. They have actually decided that they're going to cap the season tickets for any previous season ticket holders at whatever they had the previous year, and that will continue to be the way of it, from season to season, just because of the sheer numbers that they're expecting. And I believe that they're probably very close to having already sold out their season tickets. And I think that they may offer season tickets, hopefully offer a few more season tickets this year than they did last year. They generally cap them at 50% the capacity of the stadium, which is I guess 1,300. So yeah, that's that. But yeah, lots of stuff going on up here in Vermont. It is fall, so we have the leaf peepers and all that stuff. But soccer wise, yeah, I guess you're right. The green are always working in the background, right? I'm sure Matt is working on his next amazing kit. Sam and Patrick are working on logistics for next season. So hopefully trying to make a deal with the university for extended seating. So
yeah, I mean that would be great. Getting a little tight up there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And well, pretty much everywhere, honestly. But yeah, no, it's good. Sean, I finally got up to Portland. Had honestly a fantastic experience up there, and I'll be looking forward to going up there in another 3 or 4 years when I can get tickets to another game. But
no, it's good to hear that you had a great time up here in Portland. Anyone that can come out here to Portland and see a Hearts of Pine game, I certainly strongly encourage you to do so. If everyone's looking for an away day and they're trying to do all the research and trying to look for some atmosphere and good sightseeing and all that sort of stuff, I'm going to do all the work for you. I'm going to tell you to put Hearts of Pine at the top of the list. Job done. And start saving, and make sure you get your tickets before you purchase your flight, because that's the harder ticket to get. But no, the last 8 matches up here, up in Portland, saw the Hearts get 6 wins, 2 draws, 20 points over 8 matches, and have rocketed up to 5th place. The last
Amazing.
match at playing Texoma here at Fitzpatrick Stadium, saw the Hearts get their back-to-back shutout here at home. The last one being FC Naples, and of course this one being Texoma, on a 1-0 win on the night that they debuted their Blaze Orange kits here as we go into the month of October, and the Hearts are hunting a home playoff spot here for their inaugural season.
The puns just keep coming.
Yeah, I know. Okay, I personally don't like those uniforms, but they are a great uniform at the same time. Like, I won't buy one, but I get it because it makes sense.
Thomas, you got to realize, as an impartial third party here, what the Hearts of Pine are doing is groundbreaking. It's visionary, okay?
No, it
They
is.
are
No,
going
I
out.
know. I'm not
No,
even
wait.
kidding.
They're not just making soccer kits. And I know Sean could wax poetic that they're also a fashion statement, a brand, all of that. But what they really are is they're just trying to actually provide clothing to the citizens of Portland for multiple utility jobs. Right now we have people that can go out and do forestry. Now we have people that can go hunt and provide for their families, or maybe even just help children across bus stop lanes. It's critical that Portland and the Hearts of Pine continue to create these very important kits for their community so that they can do other things in them besides watch a soccer game.
Look, that's a good point. I do like them, but I won't be purchasing one. Now,
Do you know how much the city of Portland is going to save in crossing vests for next year and the years beyond?
From what I understand, there is a sufficient amount of orange in the correct color on that uniform where it can actually be worn as an approved, I'm going to go hunting with this on so other hunters don't shoot me garment. Again, it's not for me. I don't hunt. I don't think anyone should own guns for any reason. But I get it and I appreciate it.
It is a bit confusing though. There is camo to blend in combined with orange to stick out. I'm a little confused on that part. I'm not a hunter
Deer
myself.
are colorblind.
Oh, well then there you go.
So
I didn't know that. Now, can we just do another hour of deer facts and just skip all of the soccer?
I don't know if they're colorblind or not. Anyway,
Now we're lying to the audience. This is fantastic.
We're getting off track.
No, it was a factual statement, Thomas. I'm going to back you up. The deer are colorblind, and you only need one article of solid blaze orange, which would, of course, be the hat while you're wearing that main kit. So we're good to go.
See,
they are colorblind.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. All right, Oliver. Hartford
I'm
Athletic.
Oliver. I'm down here in Hartford. I got absolutely no deer facts. I got no hunting facts. I got nothing. I got a soccer team that's playing real well down here for the first time in their existence, so that's been fun. I got a racism controversy, so that's less fun. We'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, it's probably been the best, 3 months of watching soccer down here in Hartford since the team existed in 2019, which is depressing, but it's been a good summer.
Yeah, well, they're hunting for a cup, so they're in the final. It looks like they're gonna. I wouldn't say safely, but I mean they're pretty much going to make the playoffs, which is it's a bit of a rarity down there. But yeah, so I mean things are going pretty well. I think Rhode Island's going to find a way to get in. They'll squeak in, and then that's all you have to do, right? If you just get in, well then it's like a whole new season, and who knows? But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that all plays out. But I think Rhode Island will find their way in. But in the meantime, yeah, Oliver, as you mentioned, bit of some racism going on down there in, I guess this is the thing you can explain for anyone that somehow missed this. There is one team and one player that is definitely saying this occurred. And there's another team and another player that is saying, and that player's father, is saying this didn't occur. So what has actually happened down in Hartford in this game last weekend?
Yeah, so the quick version for people who missed it, last Saturday, Pittsburgh were visiting Hartford, playing. They went up 2-1 real late in the second half, and then there was kind of a bizarre incident where Marlon Hairston, who's a midfielder for Hartford, got tackled. Wasn't whistled as a foul. He went over to the official, and everyone in the stadium thought he was initially just sort of protesting that it hadn't been called. And then this conversation went on longer and longer, and at no point was the official saying, like, go away, you know, get on with the game, making no move to, you know, card him for dissent or anything like that. And it became pretty apparent pretty quickly that something more was happening, that something beyond, you know, just, you know, a little bit of dissent. And Marlon Hairston left the field. Hartford Athletic captain Jordan Scarlett left the field. Then both players came back. Then the official kind of directed both players over towards, or all the players over towards their benches. There was a little bit of back and forth, and then he signaled that the game was over, with, you know, still like 6 minutes of stoppage time theoretically to be played. And almost immediately there was, you know, it was going around the stadium that something racist had happened. The Pittsburgh player had used a slur on the field. As the Pittsburgh players are going off, the fans are, you know, screaming at them, you know, shame on you, there's no room for racism, that kind of stuff. And initially it was very hard to get a whole lot of information out of anybody other than an initial statement from Hartford that they were asking the league to investigate use of hate speech. I think that was their initial language, use of hate speech by a Pittsburgh player. And you know, subsequently, you know, Pittsburgh denied it. The player, who was not initially identified, but the player, Danny Griffin, made a statement on his own Twitter, X, I guess now, and I think maybe on his own Instagram, saying, you know, I never did anything like this. I never would do anything like this. Marlon Hairston went on his own Instagram saying, I heard you, you know what you said, you know, I'm not going to cover for you. And then finally, by Friday, the league came out. Well, the league didn't actually come out. It came out via Hartford and Pittsburgh that the league had said they'd investigated and not been able to substantiate any claim that something was said, something racist was said on the pitch. So it was kind of a weird week, actually, because there was this initial flurry on Saturday night, and then there was basically radio silence until everyone started kind of popping off on their own social media on Thursday, and then the league really just didn't comment, didn't say anything. You know, I reached out. I know Sam from the Blazing Musket also reached out, and the league just wouldn't respond to anybody's request for comment. And then at the end of the day, it was sort of like, well, you know, nothing happened, allegedly. And kind of left with a really unsatisfying conclusion, I think, for everybody, for Hartford and for Marlon Hairston and for Pittsburgh and for Danny Griffin. And it kind of, in some ways, I felt like an abdication of responsibility by the league, from my perspective. Just not really being able to step up to the moment there.
Yeah, well, this is gonna say just to the group, but like, I mean, Sam and I talked about this last week. Like, it kind of puts USL in a difficult position where if there's no concrete evidence that anyone is aware of either way, like what are they supposed to do?
I think that, I mean, for me, I think it's the time that it took, right? Like, if there's no evidence, there's no evidence, right? We don't have on-field mics. It seemed like there were not any other players close enough to provide evidence to have heard this. There were no fans close enough to provide evidence. So it's sometimes going to be the case that there's going to be an allegation and there's just no evidence. There's just the testimony of two individuals and you know, the league has to make a call. But the fact that it took 6 days to resolve this is terrible for everybody. You know, if something was said, you know, if this individual, this player had used a slur towards Marlon Hairston, taking a week to resolve that, and then potentially suspending that player for 10 games or the rest of the season when Pittsburgh is, you know, 24 hours away from playing another game is terrible, right? And on the flip side, we've gone a week where there's nothing from the league. There's no statement of any kind. The players out there saying, I went out and took a polygraph, which, you know, the validity of those aside, like, you know, this guy's twisting in the wind out there. So taking 6 days to resolve a situation like this, from my perspective, for the league is kind of almost unconscionable, right? What are you doing over 6 days? Like, by Monday, you should have spoken to everybody, determined if there's more evidence, and said what you're going to do. And then going all week, nobody's hearing. I'm asking Hartford, have you heard anything from the league? And they're saying, no, we haven't heard anything from the league. I think that's where, for me, it felt like the league kind of fell down. If there's nothing there, there's no evidence, then there's no evidence. But it doesn't take 6 days, I don't think, in a situation like this to establish that there's no evidence. And the lack of communication is pretty consistent with things I've heard about the league in the past, you know, from people who work for clubs. So,
and you know, there's a couple of different things I want to talk about this incident, but specifically to the league's response. They've been down this road before. They've had to face 2 separate instances of racial abuse, specifically geared towards now defunct San Diego Loyal. And in those same instances, they came at a very lackluster sense of urgency and prioritization from the public-facing side of things for the league and how they handled it. Obviously, I think all of us would agree these are complicated and delicate situations. But if we learn anything from the two incidents that I believe both times were found to have merit and had both of those players first suspended and then completely removed from the league, I don't even think they ever actually got back into play. There's an opportunity for USL to at least get to the forefront of setting rules and conditions about how club infrastructure needs to handle these things, and then as a league entity, get in front and be able to be the ones that are responding. I have never seen a breakdown in a camp of he said, she said, regardless of the truth of the matter, in the way not only these two soccer clubs behaved, but then also how their fan bases, it became, it wasn't even about racism anymore at that point. It was just tribalism, where they couldn't do anything but see that their person was the correct person in this argument. And it muddies an already difficult water to navigate. And it was a really bad way to do this. Now, that being said, the USL League office is basically staffed by 3 popsicle sticks and 17 interns. They do not have a very robust, they don't have a deep bench of people who can kind of pivot and then go and respond to these kinds of things in these difficult moments. I've applied and had conversations almost getting a job in the league, and I can tell you they are all wearing multiple hats. But when these types of instances happen, there has to be some sort of protocol where everyone kind of stops what they're doing and tackles the immediacy of this problem. Oliver's right. Like the polygraph test, that did nothing but add problems because no one believes in those. And yet Pittsburgh and Danny, they went and said, like, they hung their hat on, like, this is truth. And then on the other side, you know, from a response perspective from Hartford, they didn't accept it, but they also didn't publicly outcry it. They just continued to add more of the, let's call it, I'm not going to say what I'm not allowed to say, but I'm still going to make a statement. I don't think that this has been resolved. I truthfully, if we all look at it and we look at the posts, I think over time, like anything else in this world, we'll start to see these things get quieter and quieter. But I'm going to open a can of worms right here, right now, and say this isn't even Hartford's first time of dealing with this. Last season, there were claims from Loudoun. There were claims from Hartford that Loudoun also racially abused some of their players. Never went anywhere. We never heard Hartford engage past that. But in another instance, Hartford did not go the same trajectory that they are with this particular instance. I actually incorrectly attached a player's name in an article I wrote for the Blazing Musket, and I had Loudoun's entire front office and the players all call my cell phone and say, like, you have completely stepped over the line. It's really interesting that when you look at, like, again, the USL should have a blueprint for how to respond to these things, and the clubs need to do a better job of it. I know this is an emotionally hot and charged topic. We need to get to the right answers. We need to do things together, but then also, too, we can't jump to conclusions. No matter what we think, we have to do better as a group. We have to do better as a league. And these clubs bear a little bit of that responsibility and immediately going right into the talking points. And I'd like to see, if this ever happens again, like, I'd like to see the clubs let the league take over. And if the league isn't, then the club should charge the league with the responsibility, not go after individual players. It's not great for the game, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. The league, if the league takes charge of the situation and then they can tell the clubs, like, don't, like you said, don't put anything out there, like, we'll put a statement out, we'll do our investigation, we'll follow up, and then you know, you all can do what you want after that. But like you said, when nothing is coming out from the USL for several days, and like Oliver said, I mean, if there's nothing to investigate, then why not just come out on Monday and say, you know, look, sorry, but like we don't have, there's no recording, there's no, like, we've got nothing here. We've got 2 guys that are telling 2 different stories. Like, you know, is nothing we can, is it wrong?
All
Would
you
it
have
be
to do is
wrong
provide
for
a
the USL?
timeline of events. Just provide a timeline of what will happen and then hold true to whatever you make that commitment to. And if you have to say, we have not yet found anything, and that's the continuance, it's not this hard. Everyone else has figured out how to do public addressing. Like, it's not that difficult to do.
I think one thing that I noticed on Saturday was, and I think another reason why I think the league needs to take more of an initiative here, is the turnover in USL teams is incredible, right? In the front offices, in the communications department. And I know Hartford's turnover has been particularly noteworthy over the last couple of years, but I don't think it's actually all that egregious in the larger scheme of, lower division soccer. So many of these people just have no experience with this, right? They don't have backgrounds in crisis communications. They don't have tons of PR experience. A lot of them are relatively new in their careers because those are the kinds of people who end up working a lot of these relatively low-paying front office jobs in the USL. And it's the league, I think, that has to be there to say, all right, guys, I know you've never done this before, but we are the entity that has hired somebody who has the background in PR and has the background in crisis communications or whatever the case may be. We are going to step in. We have as Matt says, we have the timeline. We have the plan. We are telling you how to communicate about this because we've done the work. We've put it in. We have the resources to do that. And it just doesn't feel like the league really has prioritized that, I take the point about there not being a ton of staff there, but it is a kind of about what you prioritize. And they've definitely got the resources and the staff to, try and put teams in Boise and other places. And that's great. And I want to see teams in Boise and all those things. And also to take care of the teams and the players that already exist in the league in a way that sometimes doesn't feel like it's top of mind.
Yeah, Mike and Sean, you guys can probably speak to this pretty well. Like, talk about the size of the club staff. I don't really know that the Vermont Green or the Portland Hearts of Pine have got staff members that, like on a whim can be like, oh, okay, we need to go into crisis intervention mode. So let's just, let's go get the PR team and these guys, from what I understand, are all doing like 2 or 3 or 4 different jobs. If something like this happened in Portland, Vermont, I'd imagine that there would be a bit of a scramble to figure out what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I think that when you look at a team like Vermont Green, obviously, like you said, the 3 main owners, the 3 primary owners, are the ones doing all the work. Whether it's social media, all the way down through like negotiating with the university over extending seating and that kind of stuff. They do all that stuff. Like their first season, which was just 4 years ago, they were washing all the uniforms themselves after the game, right? So you look at that kind of stuff, and no, they don't have a crisis intervention team. Early on, Vermont did partner with the Anti-Racist Soccer Club Coalition, right? So that is basically a coalition of teams and owners that got together, and they're trying to stamp out racism in American soccer. What we see in Vermont, we haven't had any of those types of issues on the field with player versus player racism. But most recently this season, we did have to have some fan intervention. Some intervention from the Green Mountain Boys supporters group through their connections with the owners to have some racist fans removed 2 games in a row during the playoffs, who were shouting some pretty terrible racist and homophobic slurs at some of the opposing players. Luckily there's a fan base around that is very sensitive to that kind of thing, an ownership group that's very sensitive to that kind of thing. Obviously, racism is nothing new in sports, in soccer, especially. We hear stories about it all the way up through like Premier League, Bundesliga, right? Son Heung-min constantly was getting racist, epithets shouted at him constantly. He had some racist things, said from one of his own teammates, who was punished for that. And, it happened with Bukayo Saka. Like it's not necessarily generally like in these lower leagues that this stuff happens. But, I think that with a smaller club, it's a little hard to kind of get on top of that kind of stuff, like a Vermont. It's hard to get on top of that stuff. And like I said, we haven't heard any of the on-field racism yet. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, doesn't happen. It may just not be, being addressed on the field at the time. So I think, when we look at racism in soccer overall, I think soccer does in general a pretty good job of making sure that players and fans are behaving in a way that they're supposed to be. But it's going to be very, very hard to just stamp it out completely.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Sean, I mean, the other point too is like, you know, if the crowd is being very loud and vocal and is into the game, I mean, you can't hear what the players are saying. I mean, even at a relatively quiet Revs game, you can't hear a word that they're saying. This stuff doesn't really like carry into the crowd. I mean, like I remember like during when they started playing games again during COVID and there was nobody there. Then it probably would have been a little tough to get away with some of this stuff. But that's the thing. Like, I mean, it's so hard to kind of deal with in USL to have like a blanket. Well, we'll do this and that type of situation when there's so few people kind of on the ground at each game. But Sean, I mean, have you been fortunate enough not to experience any of this stuff yet?
No, fortunately, to my knowledge, everything for the most part has been on the up and up here in Portland. I just USL League One in terms of staff for the Hearts of Pine. The Hearts of Pine probably have one of the biggest staffs in USL League One. So if you were to pick a team in USL League One that would be prepared to deal with this type of event, if it were to happen, I think Hearts of Pine would probably be your best bet. Now, saying that, I'm not sure if they're equipped with all the right people on the staff to handle it, independent of the league. I would point, to Gabe Hoffman Johnson and Kevin Scholl with his experience building Atlanta United and dealing with MLS and all that sort of stuff and rubbing elbows with those guys. That between him and Gabe, maybe they'd probably have a pretty good handle on things, but they would still need the backing of the league to make sure that they are doing everything in the correct manner in terms of getting statements from everybody that was in and around the audible area of the spot that the alleged allegations took place. And of course from the head coaching staff and anyone that is available, and get those statements to the league and provide all information in transparency and what they've got on their end, and the same with the opposing club, that it took place in. And then, once the league gets all those statements and they comb over everything and have some time to assess that and get back to the clubs with any other clarifying questions and statements and wrap up their assessment, that should be pretty much where it comes to an end. And they're going to have to go ahead and make a decision at that point as a league. And I would generally agree with maybe a 2-3 days tops turnaround on that.
Can I ask a question? I'm really curious on the other side of this, not on Hairston's accusations, but on how this now affects a player who was accused. Again, not taking away from the validity of what Hartford's camp is saying, but there's now a player whose name has been dragged through the mud. And, we live in a country where you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. Obviously, that's not easy to do, especially when these are broadcasted in the spotlight, right? It's not one of those things where it happens, it's taken off to the side, there's a discussion, and then if a match gets abandoned, it was very clear who the intended targets were of whatever the situation was that led to the match being abandoned. Is this where we are at as a soccer society, where these things will always be dragged out and there's no way to avoid it? Or, because like Danny kind of has to live with this on his shoulders now, again, whether he did it or not. The official stance right now from the league seems to be that he didn't. Is that fair to Danny? The same way, is it not fair that Marlon has this opinion of what he has heard and what he's accused him of? Like, how do we find balance in this? Because, I can't see a scenario where either one of these players gets to play the remainder of the season or plays into their career into the next season, where this doesn't just kind of always sit over them in one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing when it's unresolved in a very public way, both of these guys have to try and find a way to move on. And they're the only two that really know what happened, and they don't seem to agree on. But yeah, I mean, it's, if let's say he didn't say anything, right? He's kind of screwed now, because I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people that think, because, I mean, the one way to look at it is like, well, why would somebody make that up? Why would someone... It's like, okay, but look, man, I didn't, if he legitimately didn't say it, he's kind of stuck with that now. There's going to be some number of fans, maybe coaches and GMs at other teams are just going to say, hey, look, there's several other players in this position that we're looking at. We'll just go ahead and go with the guy that wasn't accused of anything. Whether he did or, like you said, whether he did or not, we've got 5 guys we're looking at here. One of them was accused of saying something, racially motivated, and 4 of them weren't. I think we'll just go with one of these guys instead.
It happens anytime a player gets into any kind of situation like this. Even in the MLS, they're not innocent of legal accusations. I think back to Christian Pavone, where he had sexual assault claims from 6 years removed down in Brazil, and they weren't, or Argentina, and they weren't found to be true, but he never got a job again in MLS because no one wanted to touch him once those allegations hang over you. And then from Harrison's camp, I know he's at the end of his career. He's a Brendan Burke guy, so I don't think he'd go anywhere else. But now he has to sit there and be someone who allegedly cried wolf. It's clear he believes that he knows what he heard. He's now done these things. Now is his ability to tell the truth, is that at question now? I just don't see how any player wins in this, and I wish there was a better mechanism for how we could maneuver through these situations.
Yeah, I think but I think that's a great point, right? Because it argues for kind of the strong league infrastructure, right? The ability of the league to respond with confidence, and for players and coaches and fans and for the media to have confidence in the league's response, right? That being able to say, for the official, and I will say, Greg Dopka, I think, was the match official on the night, handled it immaculately. Probably the only person who comes out of this looking better than he did going in terms of how he handled the moment. So shout out to him if he's listening. But I hope, right? We'll get this in front of Pro. But for him to be able to say to Hairston, okay, we're going to do this. This is what happens. The league will investigate. And for Hairston to believe that, to have confidence in that, requires the league to demonstrate, not, as you were pointing out in these previous instances where they've kind of dragged their feet and they haven't really, moved strongly. That allows everybody to feel like, okay, we can trust in this process. I don't have to go on social media and accuse an individual player. We don't have to have this play out in the tunnel. We don't have to have, any of this happen, because everybody has confidence in the league. And that's something that can only be built over time, right? Over the league consistently over years demonstrating that they know what they're doing and that they're going to step in and they're going to handle these things appropriately and judiciously. And that isn't there right now, but the best time to start doing that was, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, but the next best time is now, right? Is to step in and have that process so that we don't have this in the future, because I totally agree, right? Marlon Harrison obviously believes he heard whatever he thinks he heard. Danny Griffin is very firm that he did not say it. Both these guys are going to carry that forward with them for whatever is left of their careers. And, fans are going to yell at them, right? I'm sure the next time Marlon Harrison goes to Pittsburgh, he's going to get it from their fans. The next time Danny Griffin comes to Hartford, whoever he's playing for, he's going to get it from their fans, right? That's inevitable, and it's unfortunate, because in this situation, it's not clear that anyone is really to blame among the players, at least as of what we know.
And what the really scary thing right now, too, is that there's a very real scenario where Hartford and Pittsburgh could see each other in the first round of the playoffs. And that, from anything completely separate, just seeing how the fan base and how even the team attitudes carry over in the rivalry games between Rhode Island and Hartford, seeing how those players just continue to know that they did not like each other. I can't even imagine what kind of can of worms an incident like this, again, to Oliver's point, when the league doesn't have control of it. And I don't even think the league really did enough to step in at the end there, since both teams kind of put out their own statements. This could all boil back over here in just a short few weeks, getting into the first round of the playoffs. And there's a very real scenario where this goes down exactly like that.
There's a sense from me that the league is sort of treating these things like, oh, we just hope they won't happen, right? We're just going to cross our fingers and hope nothing bad happens. And that's not a way to go through this, particularly in 2025, right? I think about other scenarios. I mean, I know Sam covered an instance of this, but what happens the first time a player gets picked up by ICE, right? It seems inevitable that it's going to happen, right? Or ICE picks up some fans outside a game, right? And I don't want to move us from too far away from the issue we were talking about, but it feels to me kind of a piece that the league doesn't have control of these things. The league is sort of crossing its fingers and saying, we hope these things don't happen. We hope, a player doesn't scream a slur at another player. We hope that these bad things don't happen. We hope that fans don't fight each other in the stands. And Hartford ends up being at the center of all of these things, right, for some reason. But we hope that these things don't happen, right? And then they do, and there's no plan. And that, I think, is, to me, kind of where there's just something really missing. And I know there aren't a ton of resources at the moment for the league, but it feels like it needs to be a priority.
Yeah, I think you guys both said that. I mean, everybody loses in this situation. Both players, both teams, both fan bases, the league as a whole. Absolutely does no one any good. It's just tough because you want to believe both of them. To be honest, you want to believe that, okay, why would this guy make this up? Okay, but then why would this guy that no one really seems to think has any history of this? Why would he all of a sudden, blurt something like that out? Like when Kai Wagner said whatever he said to Bobby Wood, Kai Wagner kind of looks like a guy that would say something like that to Bobby Wood. Like, it wasn't really that, like, oh, gee, I don't know. He's kind of like a real model citizen. I can't believe that he would, say an Asian racial slur in German because he knew that Bobby Wood spoke German. Or like when Luis Suarez bites somebody, it's not like, oh, I didn't see that guy. Did Suarez get a red card recently? He did something like totally insane. My wife was like, the guy's kind of nuts. I said, oh, he's bitten 2 people on the field before.
Oh, when he spit on the Sounders head of security?
Yeah. I'm like, that's nothing. He bit someone's ear 2 times in his professional career. All right, so when Luis Suarez spits on somebody, well, hey, he's getting older. He's calming down. He's not biting people's ears off anymore. So it's like, it's just tough. It's a really, not to like make a joke out of it, but honestly, like, there are some people that do certain things where it's like, that is not surprising.
Well, I'll be curious with Oliver's point about resources. I wonder if the investment will go towards some compliance and risk management, because it looks like the league needs that.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, I'm glad that resources were brought up because apparently that has all been solved. They're gonna have a crisis intervention team for all scenarios. Starting.
It'll still be interns. But they'll have it.
It'll still be interns. Yeah. It'll be interns with like a stipend. Like you get some food.
A little per diem.
Pay you. Yeah. You get a per diem. We're still not paying you any actual money. But yeah. So look, new investment in USL, Bell Tower Partners, who I'm sure no one here has heard of because their website is literally one page with an email address at the bottom of it. Has secured a minority stake in the USL and will have founder Kaesong Lee join the USL board of directors. So this very, very quickly here, just to give you an idea of who this group is, because their website literally is, this is who we are, this is who we've invested in, here's our email address, and that is it. One of the benefits of being a private equity company. So let's see here. This guy Lee left the Carlyle Group, which is another private equity firm, in 2022. He founded Bell Tower, which is invested in a number of different companies. This includes Patrikoff Company, a firm that assists athletes in finding investment opportunities. Travis Kelce, his brother, Zippity Doodah. Lengthy list of clients include former NFL linebacker J.J. Watt. But most notably to the USL, they are invested in an organization called the United Sports Development Partners, a Connecticut-based real estate developer that specializes in mixed-use projects with a stadium as an anchor. The company was responsible for the development of Centerville Bank Stadium in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, the home ground of RAFC, which of course this is on the Guardian, so everyone else would already know that. USDP has also been involved in a $600 million proposal for a soccer stadium and mixed-use project in Albany, New York. A project that initially targeted for MLS Next Pro, but has shifted its focus to the USL. So that guy and that company now have a minority stake in the United Soccer League. So any initial reactions to the, I'm pretty sure I'm the only socialist on this podcast, but any other more normal capitalistic takes from this investment?
Thomas, I'm a card-carrying member, so you and me, we're on the same page.
So I believe in capitalism and it should be checked, but we can talk another time, another place. I will jump straight into this because what most people don't know about this I won't even call it investment. It almost feels like a divestment. And I don't know why no one's reported this yet, but if they are in fact part of the United Sports Development Partners team, and this is kind of where Bell Towers is going in on it. Well, that team consists completely, and you kind of said it a second ago there, Tom, that entire team is the Rhode Island FC creator group. That is Brett Johnson, that is Dan Krober, that is Chris Canetti out of the Houston Dynamo project. These are all the people that have been trying to build a, let's call it sales pitch, a 90-second elevator pitch that they need to go out and get real estate that they can use as mixed development, whether it be business, retail, or residential, and then it's anchored by one of these soccer-specific stadiums. So I'm not quite sure yet. I've been reading up on this, how involved the team that has helped Rhode Island FC start in this larger total sum game. Obviously, Brett Johnson's probably one of the biggest players inside the USL ecosystem right now, as he's been one of the two main components of championing getting the promotion and relegation system online, as well as the Division One. He's got the larger picture with all of the investments made in Rhode Island FC. So I'm not quite sure yet how that gets back to Bell Tower. But in the spirit of that, I'm also really curious. It was reported that in that article, and I think some others, that through this investment, basically Lee was about ready to do an MLS Next Pro team in Albany. He was ready to put in like $40 million, start one up, and saw that I think Next Pro is, I think a lot of investors are suddenly realizing, outside of getting into the academy system where they're going to make money on moving players up, there's not going to be a lot of top dollar on the sporting and competition side of things. So that whole project, I don't know where it's at in terms of if Albany will still go MLS Next Pro, or if it has finally made the move to USL. I imagine it has, since now Lee is not just an investor, but he's on the board. He is now a decision maker within USL Championship. So the question I want to ask everyone, the article says it's a minority stake in the USL, but how much money do you have to pump in to a sports league to get immediately on the board, and what does that dollar look like in 2025?
It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Yeah, I mean he's not. I don't see him as just a minority investor, minority owner. Like he's the vice chair. Like I mean, this is not a small investment. He's positioned himself very well. I mean, obviously the messaging goes out that the money that he and his group are bringing in is gonna make a long-term investment into the league itself. Obviously through, like you said, through real estate development, that kind of stuff. But we don't really know a lot about what's going to happen. But this seems to me to be a big piece of the push to, one, compete with the MLS, and two, introduce Pro Rel into the United States soccer system. I think it definitely signals some sort of like broader strategic vision for the USL itself. But like it just seems like there's some stuff that we're not being told yet, right? So I mean, obviously, I think it, on its face, it might be a very, very good investment for the USL, but what lies behind that, we don't know yet. So we don't know the actual, meat and potatoes of what's going to happen. So I guess we're going to have to wait and see. I mean, quite honestly, I'm one of these guys who's just waiting for something to fail, and I don't want it to be.
Do you mean the country or one of the soccer teams? Which one
no,
are you
no,
talking
no.
about?
One of the soccer teams. So this is kind of like where I'm at with this. Is like, is this group going to come in and provide some sort of financial stability to some of these teams that are failing before they have a chance to actually be introduced into this pro rel system, or are they going to come in and just support the big teams with the big names, like you see in some of the other leagues around the world, namely Ligue 1 and the Bundesliga? and to a lesser extent La Liga, but like I don't know where it's going to go. I would like them to actually invest in a way that helps to solidify some of these struggling teams, and build some stability in the cities and the towns that they already have stadiums. I just also want to point out that I love the way that you guys in southern New England pronounce Albany.
Albany.
But yeah, I mean, I think that going into some of these like smaller market cities is a good idea, but I think that you want to, as an investor, you should be out there ready to solidify what you've already got.
Can I real fast, just as a reply?
There's a lot of crap that I just
it's
probably
Albany right
equity.
There. First and foremost, it's Albany. But second, and I have an entire West Coast nation that will back me up on that. But more importantly, this whole thing about standing up and making sure that we get deeper roots in the communities that may or may not be on life support, I guarantee you that's not what this is. And that's more strictly from my conversations directly with this USDP group. Their whole goal is to go out, and I don't know if you guys saw what's the vice president of real estate for USL? It's Nick Papadopoulos or something like that. I should know it off the top of my head, but there's too many people in charge there. Their goal, there was a LinkedIn post, and I think there was a business podcast that they did about soccer and the dimensions of its growth. They're out there right now specifically looking, and they've targeted 70 markets where they can get ahead of the real estate footprint. So that is what this deal is. Like you said, Mike, like this band's not coming in here and trying to save dying markets or teams that have mismanaged their investments. They're going out there and trying to find the real estate compromise, working with public grants. I mean, Brett Johnson wrote the book on how to take public tax dollars and make a soccer stadium. And they're going to try to do that and rinse and repeat to as many of these 70 markets that they've identified as fast as possible. I don't think anywhere in the USL's prerogative is it to save or extend lifelines to teams that are potentially going to be insolvent by the time Pro Rel comes out, or even 10 years post Pro Rel. I don't think they're going to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
No, I don't think they are either, unless we're just judging these guys based off of how almost every single other private equity company operates on Earth. So we could be prejudging. But for me, the thing that immediately jumped out is anytime I hear the word private equity, my brain goes to bad. Youth Sports, there's a company I'm not going to name that has been going around gobbling up as many youth sports organizations as they can get their greedy little hands on, with this total BS illusion that it's to streamline and increase efficiency and share ideas between all these these organizations that are supposed to be competing against each other, when really that's not what's happening. It's just they've identified the youth soccer market, the youth basketball market as a never-ending pile of money that they can it just keeps coming and coming and coming, and they've decided to get their greedy hands on it. So I struggle to think how this is going to be different. And then the second thing that immediately came to my mind is, how does this type of let's build a stadium around a real estate development, and you're talking about $400, $500, $600 million, that to me doesn't really seem to fit the model of what we're seeing in Portland, which is an unqualified success. I don't know if they have any plans for USL League 2, but if I was an owner that has, Ben and Jerry's as a sponsor, I would be a little, I guess it's just Ben now, but as a sponsor, I would be a little worried about these types of guys coming into USL, getting a seat on the board, and where they're going to start to go. Because I would guess that these types of guys don't look at a Portland as something to be replicated. They look at that as, well, yeah, but boy, they're not really making any money there. They've got to rent the stadium. It's in a downtown area. Where can they expand? How can they grow? Whereas, the guys that own Portland, that's not their mindset. So I don't have good feelings about how this is all going to play out.
For every Portland, there's a Westchester, and if you want to get really worse, there's a Texoma FC who apparently have jumped the shark, and they're already going to be moving the team because it was so poorly mismanaged. I think Collins County is going to be the new destination somewhere in North Texas. So, I mean, you're right. Portland is an outlier. It is an anomaly. It shouldn't exist. It's Fugazi. It's fairy dust. And yet it's right here proving to everyone that if you do it right, you can have an incredible soccer team and an incredible soccer community.
Yeah, exactly. And isn't that what capitalism is supposed to be, right? You go out and you try, and if you fail, and you deserve to fail, and that's just how it is. You made a bad investment, so Texoma doesn't work out, well, you got to go and try it somewhere else. Sean, anything? Honestly, my first thought was, A, what's Matt going to say? B,
I didn't want you agreeing too much with me tonight. I'm trying to be a little devil's advocate.
No, I agree. I don't disagree with anything you just said. It's all like...
Yeah, Tom, no, I'm just trying to look at the flip side of the coin here. I agree with everything that was said here. It's not typically a good thing when these types of guys get involved into a soccer group. They're looking for one thing, and they're looking for a flip payoff on the back end, or just a matter of what's the time frame, what's the segment of time until they're looking to cash in, right? So I try to draw parallels to a positive side, and I try to point to something like Fenway Sports Group out there owning Liverpool and doing good things over there in the Premier League, and how can I draw parallels to that into a sports group getting into an actual league and not just a club. If they do things the right way, and they get into the real estate side of things like discussed, and that large expansion, and they're getting money back from certain percentages from each club because they help them get up and running, and that's how they get their money back. Okay, it doesn't seem like too much of a harm if that's the case, but how big is the greed, right, is the question. And unfortunately, 3, 4, maybe even 5 years down the road, maybe we'll start getting an answer. But for now, I look at the investments and the groups that they are currently invested in, and I look at it and put it on a very skewed scale, and it seems like he's not that bad of an investor, but boy, reservations are certainly there.
I would just argue, wait, hold on. If Brett Johnson's involved, he is trying to find like-minded people that want to do this for the long term. Obviously, every investor, every equity firm is going to have a exit ramp, but if you look at Johnson, he's now been in this league since 2014, buying first a USL two-sided FC Tucson. Then he got involved in Phoenix Rising. He's moved a lot, but he's always stayed within the soccer ecosystem. So I think if we can find people in his orbit that are like-minded, whether they're eccentric billionaires or savvy investors, I don't see that as big of a threat until someone wants to get their main payday and then they rug pull the league. And if that happens, that's not us losing the game to corporate greed. That's us losing our league because it was no longer financially viable, and now they just need to sell the real estate parts of it off. That's the dangerous thing that you prop up here. You're making a bet that soccer will be successful in 20 to 25 years, and if you can't, your insurance bet is you've got this great chunk of land and property that can hedge your bets, and that's the scary thing, because I don't even think the MLS has ever done that. I don't think any other sport has ever. You need it at this point. The USL is so late to the game of professional sports in our country, but it is a risk.
Look, I think you had. Sorry, Tom. Yeah, I think you have to look at some of the other leagues too, because the top 4 leagues, professional sports leagues in this country, in the NBA, the NFL, NHL, and Major League Baseball, all have some sort of revenue sharing systems set up in order to make sure that teams don't fail. That's why teams like in the past, Chicago Cubs, who basically, for lack of better terms, piss in the mouths of their fans year after year after year, right? And the fans just happily lap that right up, right? You look at the Pittsburgh Pirates, same type of thing. Like, these leagues these leagues are out there and they have to have some sort of a revenue sharing model in order to make sure that the Cleveland Browns don't die. The Las Vegas Raiders, sure, they move from city to city to city, but they have to make sure that these teams don't die. They don't have promotion and relegation that forces these owners to invest in their teams. So what happens is that they have to have revenue sharing. So, I mean, if getting back to your comments about socialism, that is a little bit of socialism in these professional leagues. MLS doesn't have that. WNBA certainly
they don't need to have it. They're single entity. They're as social as you get because they're just one happy family.
That's communism. They're practicing communism.
I don't think the players own the means of production fully in MLS. I don't know. We could debate that one.
The players do get kickbacks, a little bit of kickback from the league, but it's minimal. Same with the WNBA. But like those top 4 leagues are still around and they're thriving despite lower attendance at MLB games and NHL games than in the past, despite low TV and radio ratings for those two leagues. I mean, it's still working out because they have revenue sharing, because they have these billionaire owners. I mean, obviously we know the idea of a benevolent billionaire doesn't exist, right? So I mean, we have to just kind of take this thing with the USL on its face and just see what happens. There's nothing that we as fans are going to do to change what happens other than support our clubs, right? We have to support our clubs, and we have to support the players that are out there doing the jobs that we go to be entertained by them,
But that is though what gets taken advantage of is they all know, like whatever league it is, they all know that the fans are. It takes so much to get a fan to walk away from a team that they can get away with a lot. They can get away with exorbitant ticket prices, overpriced, everything. You have to have 17 different streaming services to watch all the games that you want to watch. Like YouTube TV, every month I get some emails saying, oh, hey, you might lose these bunch of channels. Oh, great. Well, I can't watch IndyCar anymore if these guys can't make a deal. That's great. Now I got to go pay another $10 for some other thing. Watch
F1 instead. It's much better.
We don't have the spare time in this episode to get into an F1 versus IndyCar debate. But anyway, it's just that's the thing that worries me is they look at this as an opportunity potentially to make a lot of money and enrich themselves at the expense of the fan that they know is going to continue to show up, is going to continue to pay, and so on and so forth. But
there's no better way. At this point, you just said it. We don't have the philanthropic. Oh my gosh, I can't talk tonight. Philanthropic billionaire who's just be like, I love the game, I love the sport, and I want to see.
Just stay small. Just stay the size that you are, which I know you can't do in capitalism. You have to grow. It's all about getting bigger, and you can't just be at a level and stay there, because God forbid you just
wait. Hold on, that's not even a fair thing to say out loud. 90% of the USL teams are losers in the terms of their profitability.
Yeah.
So they need to make this next step happen so that they can at least break even, let alone worry about making money someday.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point, because I think about, like, I follow a lot of lower division English soccer for my sins, and you look at Sheffield Wednesday, right? Like, they just announced they're not going to make payroll for September, right? You look at Morecambe in the National League. Like, it looked like they might just go out of business, right? They might get wound up. I think they found new investment late this summer. Those things happen, like, to clubs that have been around for 100 years, right? If there isn't some way to find that profitability, and in the case of Sheffield Wednesday, it seems like the owner is just kind of given up, right? Doesn't care anymore. And for so many of the USL clubs, they're in the same kind of situation, right? That if look at Hartford, right? Like, they're losing money, but if the owner one day was like, you know what, I'm tired of losing money, we're just going to strip this thing back to the bare bones, and I'm going to lose as little money as possible, I'm going to be out there covering a team that's fielding a bunch of 16-year-olds, right? Or not making payroll or whatever. And to make that next leap, even into sustainability, there has to be some sense that there can be even if we're not talking about actual make yourself rich money, like some sense that we're going to make some profit or at least break even year after year. And that's simply not where the USL is right now. It's not where the championship is. It's not where League One is.
No, I'm not saying that they should just continue to exist and just lose money, right? Like I do understand that, yeah, that there has to be. So basically, are we looking at it this way, that ideally we wouldn't have to take this guy and this group's money, but what else are we going to do? This guy wants to come in, give us a bunch of money. We're going to give him a board seat. He's going to do a ton of real estate deals, and we just kind of have to live with this because we're not the NFL, we're not Major League Baseball, we're not even MLS. So like we just kind of we got to make this deal because we're trying to keep this thing going. We want to do pro rel. So yeah, this guy, we'd rather not have to take his money, but we kind of have to take his money.
It's no different. I mean, we're late to the game. MLS did this with the Hunts, the family that is the Glazers, I think, and Phil Anschutz. Without Daddy Anschutz, MLS doesn't exist. They just got their billionaire early.
Crafts put a lot of money in too, which is
Crafts. You're right. Sorry, I sometimes skip over New England. I don't know why.
It's understandable.
But to that point, they had their billionaires. Like USL, I think the richest person in the league is only 100 millionaire, right? And it's just not there yet. So I don't know what else to tell you other than we're going to need the evil money to become what we want to be, or we do it the hardest way possible, and maybe our grandchildren's grandchildren will be able to enjoy a really great soccer model here if this whole world is still in one piece,
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the alternative, right? Like, how long can these owners, how long can the guys that own Vermont Green, how long can the guys that own, Portland Hearts of Pine and Hartford, how long can they grind and lose money and keep putting money in, how long can you realistically do that where at some point it's like, okay, well, this has got to be, I at least need to get to the point where I'm not losing money to support this thing. I don't know. For those of you listening to the podcast, we're all kind of stumped here, and we just come to the realization.
Surprise!
We
weren't able to solve capitalism. So
if I had won the lottery, this wouldn't be a problem. I would have put it all into the USL.
Right. Yeah, no, I know. The 1.7 billion, whatever, I was going to put a team in Worcester. I had the whole thing figured out.
Sorry.
What's wrong with Worcester?
Tom, it's just one of those
Worcester
things.
On that list of 70 cities and towns, by the way?
No, it's actually the official list isn't out, but there was some conversation leaked about how they're targeting minor league baseball teams that have a reverse in the population change of age. So as the population is getting younger again and the minor league team is failing, that's a core market for them to target. Like they know their audience, they know what they want. They've got a blueprint, but yeah, so the smaller teams in those tertiary markets, that's what they're looking for.
They're looking to steal fans.
Yeah, when a team moves its baseball park to Worcester, they just take over and create a soccer team. It's rinse and repeat.
Sounds great.
There were guys at the RC game that I went to that legitimately were like learning what soccer is because the Paw Sox were gone. Like, I mean, that's what that was the discussion. Like, well, the Paw Sox are gone. Like, hey, maybe this could be this could be a fun time. And then they're like, what's offsides? Or like, what, what I mean? Like, but like,
there have been hundreds of people I've met and ran into, and that is their origin story into the sport.
Yeah,
it's a thing.
But hey, I mean, if that's what gets them, if that's what gets them over, that's what gets them over. Any other thoughts on private equity and how this is just how the world works, and we just have to accept it, and there's no other way.
Not for this podcast.
Not for this podcast. All right. Well, if anyone comes up with any solutions to an alternative to private money in the financial system that we all live in, feel free to send us an email or get in touch, and we'll hash the whole thing out on the next episode. All right. Do we have time to talk about coaches, or are we pretty much are we tapped out for the
fire them all?
I mean, we can start, and then I'll just Irish goodbye in the middle of it so that I can go start my live podcast of my show.
All right, Matt, why don't we get your thoughts first then? Connell Smith, specifically.
Okay, so Connor Smith isn't going anywhere. He's on a multi-year deal. But the reason this was brought up is there's been a lot of turmoil inside the coaching market within New England. Obviously, like you said, Porter out. I know Brendan Burke has righted the ship, but Oliver, I also remember just 3 short months ago, the pitchforks were out, the torches were lit, and there was demands for not just Burke but the entire front office to basically be hard reset, flipping that master switch there. So it's great to see his project kind of start to come to fruition. I'm sure as a Hartford fan, it's terrible from the Rhode Island side of things. I only say this from a fan perspective. Obviously, that these need to be results based, but what I hate to see is when fans start jumping to conclusions too early that this person isn't the guy. And that may be true. I think the best example right now we have is Caleb Porter. Year 1 of his tenure, not successful. He came in and said, hey, I don't have my guys. So what happens? He goes out and gets his guys. Turns out he can't be successful either. It turns out actually that if he doesn't have Darlington Nagbe, Caleb Porter is just half the coach that he wants to be.
Yeah.
In the case of Connor Smith, it's an interesting paradigm because most of the USL teams, they rotate, they turn over year after year. We're starting to see a divestiture from that. We're starting to see teams retain talent longer, find opportunities to sell their players on, or even amongst other teams in the league. So it was a surprise to see Rhode Island FC keep like 16 of its players out of its 26-person roster last season. You then go into the next season thinking, okay, Kano's got the blueprint, Kano's got the sauce. He's going to do some sort of thing again. But whether through the additional players he acquired or the fact that he completely 180'd from the tactics that made him so successful, that's going to be a head scratcher that I can't wait to ask him at the end of the season if he still wants to talk to me. The fans almost immediately were like, okay, we don't like this. And almost like what we were talking about with Danny Griffin earlier, we're like, you're innocent until proven guilty. No one wanted to give Kano the time. Everyone wanted the results now because in this world, results are all that matters. It's not how you get there. It's just get me higher up the table. And the problem that complicates Kano's job, though, is that you watch him week in and week out working with the tools. Now, he was hamstrung with injuries, more so than almost any other team this year in the championship. But then once the team got healthy, you didn't see the inspiration from the players to go out and fix the things that people who had never played the game could recognize that they were watching when they'd go to these games. And that's the frustration. I think kind of how we were talking about transparency with the league, and this is our job as media to do as best of a job as we can to spotlight it. When you don't see the product improve and you don't know what is holding the team back from improving that product, it falls somewhere between the club's transparency with it and the media's job to be able to put that in front of the fans. I feel like I can say that every time we've asked Kano, like, what do you need to do differently? His answer has always been, I don't know. I need to review the tape and figure things out. That's not a good enough answer. If you're not a coach that will throw your players under the bus, if you're not a coach that will admit that you get things wrong, we didn't hear Kano say that he made, like, accountability wise, we didn't hear Kano say that he was accountable for anything until only maybe the last home game, which that's the second week into September. That's far too deep into the season when you've been in and out of the playoff hunt for the entirety of that season. You have the lowest goal production in the league. You can't sit there and not take that accountability earlier. And so it just exacerbates the problem that the fans have. They want to see then all of a sudden, you're not the guy, you don't have the answers, so we have to have you gone. But the thing that I don't understand in this fan culture is, let's say you do get rid of Kano back in August when I think people, it was after the Hartford games, after we got completely smashed by Hartford. That's the first time it came out. How do you then go say, okay, you know what, Kano, we don't want you here anymore? Great, fine. But what do you do next? One of the assistant coaches may be able to step up in the interim, but you have these players on 2-year, 3-year contracts. That, for all intent and purpose, I know another coach can come in and take those tools, but wouldn't you want to give the coach some leeway, some runway to see, like, you have a vision, only you know the roster you've constructed. Why not find out what that can be? And I have to say, Brendan Burke's the greatest example of that. Hartford is a great supporter group in terms of standing up and supporting a mostly losing history. They now know what it feels like to be a winner, and it's really curious how short of a memory span they have, knowing that Brendan Burke could have been gone before they would have even seen this turn. Sometimes coaches just need time, and it's a criminal shame that we don't give coaches more time. I think Porter had enough. I think 2 years is always enough to figure out your project. But I see coaches come in the Premier League. I see coaches come in MLS. They get like 4 months, and it's like they got to go.
Yeah.
Now, Pro Rel is a different story, and I'll be really curious how that shapes the narrative in a couple of years where you don't have the ability to wait on 2 or 3 years. But as of right now in the American game, that's not an issue, and it needs to change. Kano's going to be here next year. After that 6 months, maybe into the summer transfer window, if he hasn't fixed things, we could have that conversation, because then he'll have had 18 to 24 months of tenure on this team where he should be able to find some things to pull threads. But like, asking for a coach's departure, we saw fans asking in April that he needed to be gone because we weren't winning games. Like that has to stop.
Yeah. No, definitely. All right, Matt, I understand you have to go. We really appreciate you coming on the show as always. Please be sure to check out the Raising Anchor podcast, which you can find on the Blazing Musket or wherever you get your podcasts from. So Matt, thank you. See you again. And best of luck with your next podcast, which apparently is starting right now.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
I know, Sean. Bobby Murphy's having a pretty good season this year, right? Similar to Connor Smith last year. How quickly do you think, and Mike, same thing for you, how quickly do you think people would turn on Bobby Murphy, who the team's having a good year? He's a genuinely likable guy. I'm not just saying that. Like, he is a likable guy. He seems to fit in Maine. He understands what's going on up there. But if they're, let's say there's 20 teams in League One next year, they're sitting 12th or 13th halfway through next year, and things just aren't clicking. You know, how quickly do you think people would turn, like some people turned on Connor Smith?
Yeah, no, Coach Bobby Murphy has got, quite a bit of equity in the bank in just a short, 8 or 9 months here. He's been actively in the 2025 season for the Hearts of Pine. And if everything was to go south for Coach Bobby Murphy and going into next year, and, we're languishing down mid-table or, lower in that 21-team USL League One standings that it's going to look like next year, I think at the very minimum, he would have all of next year to try to make it right. Now, whatever the case may be, and why he would be down so low in the standings, would be up for debate, and certainly would influence and maybe how the fans would take it with Coach Bobby Murphy. But he has got a lion's share of equity in the bank already, and I at the very least I would see him finishing out the entire season next year. And then, as you normally would, you'd make an assessment at the end of that second year and say, okay, what did we experience? What did we see? What was the hurdles that Coach Bobby Murphy was trying to get over that you just had a tough time in that second year and didn't have a really good season compared to year one? And do we want to reinvest in Bobby Murphy for a third year? And, would have to go ahead and make that choice. But in terms of the fans and solely the fans, I think he's got a really long leash here up in Portland.
Yeah, now, Mike, this is what I ask you, and then just talk about Vermont in general. But is Matt talked about this with Kano? Kano seems to kind of deflect the blame quite a bit. I know for sure a lot of people were put off by Caleb Porter doing the same thing. It was just never his fault. It was always something, always this, always that. Like, can you, as a coach, do you think a coach can get more buy-in or buy himself more time with the fans based on how he presents himself publicly when he comes out and talks publicly? Do you think that can give people a little bit more willingness to kind of see things through if they feel like they're not getting, if they feel like they're not getting BS'd every week?
Look, I mean, the first thing to answer your question, I think it's a double-edged sword there. Like, you go out like a Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte. There's a few others that I can mention, but they come to mind immediately because of my club in Europe is Tottenham. But like, those are guys who are known for throwing their players under the bus, right? It's never their fault, right? They're not taking instruction, they're not, they're not playing the system right. that kind of a thing. And then you have coaches who refuse to throw the players under the bus and take all of it on themselves. And I will point to another Tottenham manager, Ange Postecoglou, right? And it has to be, there has to be a fine line you can walk with that. The problem, the thing that you might see, and you're seeing right now with Kano, you could possibly see with Bobby Murphy, you could see with Chris Taylor, and you almost saw it with Adam Pfeiffer too. Is that when your team is new to a league and you have immediate success, right? The real challenge is for that coach to follow it up the next year and do the same exact thing. Mm-hmm. So Rhode Island making the championship in their first year is almost a curse for Kano, right? Because if he doesn't follow it up with something very, very similar, guess what? You get people calling for your head in April, right? Bobby Murphy runs that risk. Like that team in Portland is fun to watch. They're fun to watch. They're exciting. The product out there is exciting.
Excellent.
They're one of the most lovable teams in especially group of players in all of U.S. soccer. I would say outside of my own very, very own Vermont Green, but we obviously recycle players, during the season even. And then you have an example like Hartford here, who has been toiling under this system, and what are you going to do? Are you going to and I know you might hate to hear this because it comes from Mikel Arteta, but trust the process, right? And obviously, in Hartford, your manager has a longer rope, right? In the USL, your manager might have a longer rope, like Matt was talking about. And if you're trusting the process and you have a manager that the players like, who gives a shit how long it takes, as long as you eventually get there, right? So I think, with Adam Pfeiffer, I think at the end of his tenure last season, the previous season, you look, fans, including myself, were starting to think, is this the guy? Obviously after the second season, he wasn't going to be the coach. And he was going to move into that kind of general manager role, director of sporting role that he's in now. It just didn't work out. And he assumed that role as the coach the last year. And people toward the end of the season started to question, was this the guy? What do we need to do here? And when Chris Taylor stepped up, then, that the way that the vision kind of changed for the club. Pfeiffer was able to do what he really does well, which is recruit. And Chris Taylor was able to do what he wanted to do with the club and put his vision in the club. And it came out pretty rosy. But what happens with this club next year if, one, maybe they don't make the playoffs, two, maybe they get to the playoffs but don't progress to the championship, or God forbid don't even make a run at the playoffs? I mean, what does that do to a fan base? What does that do to a club itself? What does it do for an ownership group? What does that make them think? Which direction do we need to go? Were we too high, too fast? It's like it's Icarus.
Yeah. Well, that makes it kind of go back to what we were talking about before. With all the real estate and all this other stuff around the around the team. If the whole thing is centered on a sports team playing in a stadium and that team isn't doing well, ticket sales go down, restaurants, the whole thing can potentially kind of start to collapse on itself. But then you look at the Vermont Green, you look at Portland for sure, and and even Hartford. You can see that there's enough of a good time there at the stadium. It's not super expensive. It's not hard to get to. It's genuinely a good time. So maybe that can help stomach a bit of a rough season. Whereas again, to bash on the Revs a little bit, You know, when they're not having a good season, there's not a whole lot else around that team. Like the stadium experience is it's fine, but it's not great. It's just okay. So if it's just okay, but the product on the field is poor, then I think it's much easier for people to walk away. Whereas Portland, I think it'd be really hard to walk away, or Vermont, Hartford, Rhode Island. You know, there's something more than just what's happening, on the field, and I think maybe that also kind of helps the coaches. But Oliver, last word here, and then we'll wrap up. You know, Brendan Burke. You know, I mean, some people might have said this guy needs to go back in July, but do you think maybe part of it was it's not like everything was great and then Brendan Burke showed up and everything went downhill? Things were kind of at the bottom of the hill for a while anyway, right? So, like, how many times is it going to be the coach, right? Like, it had to eventually be something else.
Yeah, I think, earlier this season, I was after the loss to Portland in the Open Cup, right? I think that was when you first started to see people saying, Brendan Burke out, right? This guy has this. We were promised this guy was going to come in and he was going to turn things around. We didn't even make the playoffs last year. Now we're losing. We just lost to a brand new USL League One team in the Cup. Like, get this guy out of here and start, burn it down and start all over again. And I think some of that is just so many American soccer fans, and I include myself in this, are like brain poisoned by watching so much European soccer, right? Like, I watch a lot of fourth tier English soccer, and there's like 40% turnover in managers over the course of a season, right? Like, there's 24 clubs, and probably half of them, 10 to 12 of them, are going to fire their manager, over the course of a season, or have their manager move on. And so, like, that's what we're conditioned to, right? Get the guy out. It's not working. Turn it around. Get somebody in here who's going to get different results. And there's kind of two problems with that. One is there just aren't the volume of guys, right? Like, you fire Brendan Burke in May, who are you going to bring in?
Yeah.
There aren't these guys who are out there who are relegation, specialists or who are ready, sitting on the street, who've had success or at least had mediocrity in the league to come in, turn the ship around, stabilize things. And the other thing is, too, like, it doesn't work in England, right? You look at the, League Two, the clubs that fired their manager last season, none of them were in the promotion places at the end of the season. All the clubs that got relegated from League Two down to the National League, or from League One down to League Two even, fired their manager over the course of the season. So it's not like it works when you do that. And there's not a lot of evidence, right, to suggest that getting rid of the guy a couple of months into the season is going to turn the ship around for you. And so in the case of Brendan Burke, I think, it's fair to say the seat should be kind of warm, right? We're now getting up to 50 games in charge. That's enough to maybe say, can you really get it together? But the other side of it is that what's the resources to work with? And when they came into the season with barely 18 guys, professional players, to travel, and there were multiple games early in the year where there were like 14 guys, sitting on the bench at the beginning of the game, it's like, who's going to win in this situation? Alex Ferguson probably wouldn't win in this situation. You're just not going to get those kinds of results, right? And I think what you've seen with Hartford over the course of the season is like two things, right? One, the results started to turn around. The guys who were on the roster got healthy. They were available. They weren't picking up stupid red cards and being suspended. They weren't being called up for their national team. And there started to be results. And then there was also clearly some resources to build the team. And it wasn't, super sexy signings, but like filling out the roster and bringing in, another fullback, bringing in another midfielder. So there wasn't, only 14 guys to play. And you see how those things like have to go together, right? You have to have the resources to be competitive in whatever league it is. And so when that was there over the summer, you had this stretch where Hartford played, 5 games in 15 days, and they won 4 of them, and they played 21 guys over that stretch, like 20 outfield players. They didn't even have 20 outfield players available at the beginning of the season, right? Like, yeah, you can get those results if you've got 20 guys who can be competitive in this league. You can do that. So I think we as fans, and I include myself in this again, like rush to this because so much of the soccer we watch from outside of this country has this incredibly high rate of managerial turnover and has this deep bench of guys at whatever league it is who are ready to go, who are just sitting at home waiting for a phone call to come manage, whatever team it is, Ebbsfleet or, whatever team in the 5th tier in England. And that's just not the reality here. There's a really short list of guys who are available at any given time. I know the other thing about that is, now it's going well for Brendan Burke. Should New England give him a call? I mean,
Why not?
I put him on the long list. I'd give him a call. You know,
I think they at least should have a conversation.
Yeah, I think it's much more likely that he would go to be a top assistant to Jim Curtin. Like, I think if New England hired Jim Curtin, I think there's a really strong chance that Brendan Burke would want to leave Hartford if they let him go. I think he's under contract for at least next season as well. I think that's much more likely, but I'd give him a call.
Yeah.
Yep.
At least give him a call. All right. We are going to give it a call. Can you say whatever? We're going to call it a wrap. Call time on this episode. No, so look, Mike, Sean, Oliver, really appreciate you guys joining us. For those of you that don't know, of course, you can find Mike and Sean's podcast. They are part of the Blazing Musket Podcast Network. You can get the links down in the show notes. If you do not already follow those shows, please be sure to check them out. If you are a Blazing Musket subscriber, you will see those shows pop up in your inbox and on the website. So please do give them a listen if you don't do so already. And Oliver, of course, covers the Hartford Athletic for the Blazing Musket in print form. So however their season goes from here, be sure to keep up with that with Oliver and his great writing, and Mike and Sean on their excellent podcast, which of course are all part of the Blazing Musket Podcast Network. I am your host, Thomas Benzone, which I got in here at the end instead of the beginning, but whatever. Had some technical difficulties. We really appreciate you joining the show. As always, please do like and subscribe to this show as well. If you haven't already, leave us a review if you are enjoying the show. And of course, please do not forget to check out the Blazing Musket website for all of your coverage of all things New England soccer. So thank you again for joining us, Mike, Sean, and Oliver. Appreciate you guys coming on as always, Matt as well. And we will see all or most of you here again next month.